Well, it looked like it was going to be a great win for the A's in New York against the possible American League favorites here in 2026. That was until the bullpen got a hold of the game.
You are Locked On A's, your daily podcast on the Athletics, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, A's fans, not a lot of good news coming out of yesterday's loss to the Yankees. It looked like there was going to be a lot of good news. The A's got some timely hitting from Nick Kurtz to give them a lead early in the game. They were up 3-1, but the entire game, it just felt very tenuous, right? It just kind of felt like the A's needed to score more or they were going to find a way to blow it. And unfortunately for the A's, they were unable to keep their 3-1 lead throughout the rest of the game because the bullpen betrayed them. And as you can tell here by our lineup of segments, we're going to be talking about the bullpen and the pitching staff a lot today. First and foremost, we're going to do a deep dive on the game yesterday, unfortunately, as the A's lost to the Yankees. Some good things, some bad things. Then I want to talk about this pitching rotation. I want to talk about the starting rotation. I want to talk about the bullpen. And I have a lot of critiques I want to make, not just about the way the bullpen has been used, which I think has in many ways been nonsensical, but also about just the fact that the A's need to improve in this area if they want any chance of winning this year. And then later on, we're going to address the fact that Luis Morales was sent down to AAA. We're going to go deeper into that, kind of talk about Luis, maybe some things that he should work on while he's down in the minor leagues, and just overall kind of talk about what his future is with this A's team after being sent down after only 2 starts. But first and foremost, the big headline has to be the A's went into the Bronx last night. They were up 3-1 after the third inning where Nick Kurtz came up with a clutch 2 RBI double to put the A's out in front. Aaron Civale, I mean, what a pickup this guy has been. Civale has been the A's most consistent and best pitcher outside of Jeffrey Springs so far here in 2026. In this particular outing, Civale goes out there and gives the A's 5 innings, only allows 2 hits, only gives up 1 earned run, and strikes out 6. You're talking about an elite performance from a guy like Aaron Civale, who, like we talked about early on in the season, was kind of looked at and has been throughout his career, more of kind of that end of the rotation guy, sinker baller, consistent guy who's going to go out there and, you know, maybe give you 5 innings with 3 earned runs. No, this was this outing, this was a dominant outing. And if it wasn't for Ahmed Rosario, who of course ended up crushing everyone's dreams as an A's fan later in the game as well, he gets through this outing probably without allowing a single run. And the thing that was crazy about Civale in this game was this dude only throws 92, 93, but he was throwing it by these Yankees hitters, including Aaron Judge. And he made Giancarlo Stanton look like a fool on a few of those breaking pitches that he was able to snap off. So Civale, his stuff looks electric to start the season, about as electric as I've seen Aaron Civale look in any season. And we're talking about a guy who's on the other side of 30 right now. And so Civale, I think he has been phenomenal. He was definitely a bright spot here tonight. And, you know, look, there were a lot of bright spots in this game up until the very end. I mean, I thought the A's overall played pretty well, to be honest with you. I also talked about Nick Kurtz and the fact that he came through with a big hit here today. I mean, this is a guy who's really struggled. He came up with the big RBI double in the third to put the A's up 2-1. Tyler Soderstrom followed that up with a double of his own a couple of hitters later. And he ended up making 3-1 Athletics. And so you have 2 of the big boppers in this A's lineup coming up in big spots in the third. But then the lineup just kind of fizzled out after that. The lineup didn't do anything after the third inning. And it's crazy because in yesterday's episode, we were talking about how Cam Schlittler was going to be such a tough customer for the A's in this game. And look, Schlittler didn't pitch bad, 5 innings, 3 earned runs. But you're talking about a guy who only had given up 3 hits in total throughout the entire season in 11 innings pitched. Coming into this outing, the A's are able to get 5 hits against him and score 3 runs. And then after that, the A's couldn't do anything against the Yankees bullpen. They couldn't do anything against Bird. They couldn't do anything against Hedrick. They couldn't do anything against Cruz, and they definitely couldn't do anything against Bednar. So again, you know, we see flashes of this A's lineup where they look really, really good, and they look kind of like the team we expected them to be coming into the season. But then we also just go through these droughts where the A's lineup just can't seem to do anything. And again, you heard me talk about this earlier in the season. The A's cannot afford to waste performances from starting pitchers like the one they got from Aaron Civale because of how weak the A's pitching is compared to what their lineup should be. Civale went out there and gave the A's an elite start today, and the A's couldn't pay it off. Now, with that said, it's not the lineup and the starting pitcher, definitely not the starting pitcher, but the lineup is not who's at most blame for this loss. Don't get me wrong. It would have been nice if they could have added some insurance, and then we wouldn't have to have been in a situation where the bullpen could blow it. But once again, the bullpen disappoints the A's here today. Mark Leiter, who I'm sorry, is not a setup man. He is not a setup man. He's not the guy you want to trust in the 8th inning. He doesn't throw that hard. His stuff isn't that great. And you look consistently throughout his career, including a stint with the Yankees, he's never been a late inning guy. He's always been a middle inning guy. He's always been someone that you bring out in lower leverage situations. So the fact that the A's are putting him out there in the 8th, and this isn't the first time Mark Kotsay's done this, by the way. We've seen throughout the season him make some very questionable calls with who he puts out in late inning situations. I mean, just a couple days ago, JT Ginn was pitching in the 7th inning in a high leverage situation, which completely boggled my mind. But the fact that Mark Leiter is pitching in the 8th inning, it's not like other guys were unavailable. Heck, the A's had a day off yesterday. Michael Kelly's available. Elvis Alvarado's available. Hogan Harris is available. And I get Hogan Harris is a lefty, so you want to save him for those kind of left-on-left situations. But Hogan Harris is a guy who's actually proven he can come through in late-game situations for the A's, as opposed to Mark Leiter. Why was Mark Leiter in that situation to begin with? And then you go after that, and the fact that the guy who they just called up for Luis Morales, by the way, Kunal, he's the guy they go to after Mark Leiter in the situation where the A's needed to stop the bleeding. It made absolutely no sense. And again, like, to continue to harp on Mark Kotsay's selection of these pitchers in these situations, Justin Sterner pitched 2 innings earlier in the game. Hold up. So you're telling me that Justin Sterner, who I think when he's on is a legitimate late inning type of guy, you have him go out there and get you the 6th and the 7th, and then you give it to Mark Leiter in the 8th? Seems kind of like we got it backwards here. Mark Leiter is definitely more of a guy that you put in the 6th and the 7th, and then you bring out Justin Sterner for the 8th. Or you don't bring out Mark Leiter at all, and you bring out Michael Kelly, you bring out Elvis Alvarado, or you bring out a guy like Hogan Harris, guys who have proven they can come through in these situations for the A's. Mark Leiter has not been that guy throughout his entire career, and he definitely hasn't been that guy this season with the 4 earned runs he gave up today. Now, I get it. The 4 earned runs in 2/3 of an inning is going to balloon your ERA, but still, his ERA is now at 10.83, and you take a look at Mark Leiter as of late. I mean, he really has not been all that sharp for the A's ever since coming over to the Athletics. I think he had one good outing against the Braves in that series in Atlanta. But other than that, Mark Leiter has really kind of been the guy that he's been his entire career, which is kind of a middle inning type guy that you don't really put in big time situations. You go back to his outing against Houston where he gave up a walk and a hit. You go back to his outing against Atlanta where he gave up 2 hits. And it actually ended up being the save in that situation. That was the outing I was talking about, but still, it wasn't easy. He gave up 2 hits, put runners on base, and made all A's fans nervous. So I just don't understand why Mark Leiter is out there in the first place in that situation. Again, this is a guy with a career MLB ERA of 4.67. And his strike, it's not like he's like this elite strikeout guy either. He's got 397 strikeouts and 356 and 2/3 innings, which is not bad, but still, I mean, like, it's not like his stuff when you watch him pitch is elite strikeout stuff, and that's usually the guy you want in those late inning situations. So with all that being said, we're going to take a break, and then I want to go even deeper and dive even more into some of these A's pitching issues because, I think today has really kind of ticked me off in a way where it's time that we really start addressing the fact that the A's, if they want to be serious about competing here in 2026, they need to improve on the pitching side. And whether that means that you got to go out and get someone, or whether that means that you got to really look at some of these younger guys down in AAA, who knows? But either way, the A's need to improve. And then after that, we're going to stick on pitching. It's a real pitching day here today on Locked On A's. We're talking about Luis Morales, the fact that he got sent down to AAA, and just kind of some of the things the A's really wanted to work on while he's down in Vegas, getting ready to hopefully come back to the big club sometime soon.
Hey, this is Jeff Carr from Locked On Reds, and when it comes to our futures, we all have great ideas when it comes to our job, when it comes to our house, when it comes to our vehicles, all that great stuff. But honestly, when it comes to securing that future, I don't know what I don't know. And when me and my wife sat down to figure out the life insurance thing, Ethos made everything simple. Everything's online. You have a quick and easy application process, and you find out exactly what you need for coverage all in one spot. Ethos makes everything so convenient when it comes to learning about your own life insurance, because insurance is something that is far beyond batting average or on-base percentage. It's way out in left field for me. Ethos made it all easy. Take just 10 minutes and get covered today with life insurance through Ethos. Get your free quote at ethos.com/lockedonmlb. That's ethos.com/lockedonmlb. Application times may vary and rates may vary.
Thank you to the host of Locked On Reds, Jeff Carr, for that message. And let's carry on here with Locked On A's, and let's talk more about the pitching and, well, the fact that the A's have a problem when it comes to the pitching. Now, look, I'm going to sit here, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to give some of the bad performances we've seen in the pitching a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, because the lineup hasn't been phenomenal to start the season by any means. The lineup has had its issues. We've talked about it on the show. But with that said, the A's came into the season with a starting rotation of Luis Severino, Jeffrey Springs, Luis Morales, Jacob Lopez, and Aaron Civale. So far, of those 5 guys, only 2 of them are pitching well. Jeffrey Springs and Aaron Civale. We'll see Severino tomorrow. God knows what's going to happen to Luis Severino in New York. I don't even want to guess. But of those 5 guys, also one of them has been sent down, and we'll talk about this later, Luis Morales. So here the A's are. They already came with a lot of question marks in that pitching rotation. I don't think anyone in Major League Baseball was looking at a pitching rotation of Severino, Springs, Morales, Lopez, and Civale and thinking that, I don't think any of them were looking at that with a whole lot of fear. That seems like a very hittable group of 5 guys that you have in your starting pitching rotation. But now that we've seen these guys a couple times through, I mean, look, the A's came into this season with a lot of hopes. I don't see them making the playoffs, and I definitely don't see them making any sort of a run in the playoffs unless they go out and they get better pitching for that starting rotation. Now, what does it look like? Does it mean you got to go and call up Gage Jump? Does it mean you got to rush up Jamie Arnold? Does it mean you got to go out and get someone? I don't know, but there has to be better answers than the guys they have in the starting rotation right now. Now we can get to the bullpen. First and foremost, the personnel in the bullpen isn't great, and I want to talk about that in a second, but this bullpen could look a lot better if Mark Kotsay managed them correctly. And, I know that I've gotten some mixed comments on Mark Kotsay as far as some of the stuff I've talked about on the show. I think Mark Kotsay is a great man. I've gotten the chance to meet him. He's been nothing but gracious and kind every time I've gotten the chance to interact with him. I think he's a great baseball guy too. And I think he legitimately does have the best interest for the A's in mind. I think he legitimately sees this job as kind of an opportunity to really help an organization kind of in flux that he really loves and he has come to care about through his time with them in his career. So I think Mark Kotsay, and I also think Mark Kotsay, he's put together a nice coaching staff. And I think that as far as developing young players, I think that he's a pretty darn good baseball guy in those terms. As far as the bullpen management, look, and this goes back to last year with Mason Miller. Mark Kotsay was so overly conservative with Mason Miller, and there'd be a few games where the A's had an opportunity to win, and they wouldn't put Mason Miller out there, and they'd lose those games. And you end up trading Mason Miller. Now he's with the Padres, and the Padres are using him the way that you should use a high-level all-star reliever, and that is every freaking chance that you get as long as he's healthy. And Mason Miller had some frustrations about this. And to me, that is one example of just a larger trend that we've seen from Mark Kotsay, definitely over the last couple of years, but throughout his A's tenure of mismanaging the bullpen. I can look at today, and you already heard my rant in the first segment. When you have Hogan Harris, when you have Michael Kelly, you have Elvis Alvarado available. Why is 93-mile-an-hour throwing Mark Leiter, who has never been a shutdown reliever in Major League Baseball, why is he coming into the 8th inning against maybe the most dangerous lineup in the American League in a situation where you have a chance to get a big-time win in Yankee Stadium early in the season? Makes no sense. Why are we bringing in Kunal, the rookie, the guy who just got called up, who probably has no idea where he is and is just trying to figure out how to, get his breath? Why is he the guy who's coming in after Leiter when we got to hold things down? Why is Justin Sterner the one coming in for the 6th and the 7th when this is a bona fide late innings guy, and he's been pitching like it this year. A 1.5 ERA for Justin Sterner. And if you watch Justin Sterner last year, aside from a little blip in the middle of the season, he was dominant in a lot of these late inning situations. And then the whole closer situation just absolutely drives me crazy. Who the heck is the closer for this team? And I know that we're in an era of Major League Baseball where some of these roles are a little bit more ambiguous, and some teams do that intentionally. You know, we've seen the Tampa Bay Rays, you know, their whole thing, which is like, I don't got a closer, I don't got starters, I got out-getters. Look, that's all cute, but at the end of the day, when you're in a Major League season and you get to that ninth inning and you got to go against dogs on the other side, and you got to get dogs out late in the game, you got to have your own dogs that you know you can rely on day in and day out to come in those situations and get outs. And A, I don't think the A's have great personnel in the bullpen, but B, I don't think these guys know what their roles are. Who's going to come out and come into the game in a setup situation right now? Well, it could be JT Ginn, who might end up going back to the starting rotation now that Luis Morales is sent down. That makes no sense. It could be Elvis Alvarado, and Elvis Alvarado's got all the arm talent in the world. I'd still take him over Mark Leiter, but he has no idea where it's going half the time. Michael Kelly, I mean, is he a closer? Is he a middle relief guy? Is he a setup man? I don't think he knows. Hogan Harris, is he a middle reliever, left-handed thrower, or is he a closer? I don't think he knows either. And the point I'm getting at here is that A, Mark Kotsay makes questionable decisions in pretty much every high leverage spot when it comes to bringing guys in. But B, no one knows like what their purpose is in the bullpen. And from what I found from watching great teams, what I found from covering teams, is that the teams where the players know their roles, where they know what's expected of them day in and day out. This could be the lineup, and this is part of the reason why I still have no clue why Nick Kurtz is batting leadoff and why Jacob Wilson is batting fifth. It could be the starting rotation. Who's the ace? And then it's definitely in the bullpen. Who's the closer? Who's the guy who we're going to go to in the late innings? These are things that help big league players, A, stay in a rhythm, and B, it helps give them confidence to believe, hey, the manager trusts me to go out in the eighth inning and get these outs. So I'm that guy. Or, hey, the manager trusts me to go out in the ninth inning and get these outs. So I'm that guy. Right now, the A's, there is none of that. Now, as far as the personnel is concerned, I think the A's somehow expected that magically they were going to trade Mason Miller and there's going to be no drop-off whatsoever in their bullpen. And maybe the way the bullpen performed at the end of last year gave them some delusions that that was the case. But come on, guys. If Michael Kelly is your best answer at closer, and I like Michael Kelly. I think Michael Kelly has a spot in a good big league bullpen, but he's not a closer. If Elvis Alvarado, who, by the way, I think has a lot of arm talent, as he is right now, is your closer. If Hogan Harris, as he is right now, is your closer, gosh, if Mark Leiter, as he is right now, is your closer, that's not a good big league bullpen. I'm sorry. That's not a bullpen that I trust in the late innings to try to get outs. And if the A's are going to be serious about competing, not just this year, but going forward into Vegas, they're going to have to do what all really good teams do, and that is invest in their bullpen. Come up with shutdown guys that you can go to in the back end that you know, okay, these are the guys that we can go to and we know are going to shut things down. Take a look at the Yankees. The Yankees traded a bunch of prospects last year to go and fortify their bullpen. They went out and got two closers, David Bednar and Camilo Doval. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, as someone who lives in the Bay Area and who has watched Giants baseball before, Camilo Doval was no sure thing. But now you put him out in New York, you give him pinstripes, you have him as a setup man with David Bednar behind him, and you got a pretty nice bullpen. The Dodgers, you talk about a team that has done everything they can to make sure that their bullpen is ready for the postseason. And we talk about it every year in Major League Baseball, how the Achilles heel for the Dodgers is the bullpen. And then they always go out in the trade deadline. They always invest, and they always make sure that their bullpen is ready to go for the postseason. Even the Toronto Blue Jays last year, they went out and got Louis Varland. They went out and made moves to make sure that their bullpen was ready to go for the postseason. And we live in a day and age in baseball where, unfortunately, starting pitchers are not expected to go longer than 5 or 6 innings. And if that's the case, and if that's the game that we are currently playing in, and if that's the baseball universe that we currently exist in, if you're going to be a good team, you have to have a good bullpen. And right now, the A's do not have a good bullpen. They don't have a bullpen where anyone knows their role. And it's really frustrating to watch games like I just watched yesterday, where the A's were up 3-1 on the AL favorites, the New York Yankees, and for all intents and purposes, looked like they belonged in that field with that New York Yankees team that has Aaron Judge, that has Cody Bellinger, that has Giancarlo Stanton, that sent up Schlittler, who is a bona fide young superstar candidate, and the A's were able to get to him. To watch the A's do that and then have the bullpen completely blow it because of bad personnel and because of bad managerial decisions is super frustrating, especially when you're someone who expects this A's team to do good things this year. And man, I don't doubt the A's can win some games off the strength of their lineup. And I don't even doubt that the bullpen could go out there and go on a hot streak for a month or so. But as far as sustainably being able to win games, especially in late game situations, the A's have to make some moves to make this starting rotation and to make this bullpen better. Or unfortunately, A's fans, I just don't think the A's are going to do much this year. And that's super frustrating when you look at the core that the A's have built on offense and what those guys are capable of. And I hope that today, along with some of the other issues we've seen, whether it be in Toronto, whether it be in this last homestand against Houston where the starting rotation of the bullpen was trash, or whether it be in Atlanta, I hope that these situations and that these games serve as lessons to the A's brass and as lessons to Mark Kotsay so that we get better bullpen management and we get better bullpen personnel going forward. And all you can do is hope, right? But anywho, we're going to talk about Luis Morales in the next segment. He got sent down to AAA yesterday before the game, and I just kind of want to talk about him because that was a very interesting move to me, and we'll break it down after this break. The MLB season is here where every pitch matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing the way a team's season is going to go. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. Here's what I like about it. You can bet just $5 to get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. The app makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups all in one place. And during the regular season, that extra insight really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. It just makes the entire baseball season experience more engaging from start to finish. Right now, as we go into this A's and Yankees series, the A's currently are looking at some pretty large odds to beat the Yankees, according to FanDuel. Right now, FanDuel has the money line at a negative 295, reflecting a 64 to 65% win probability for the New York Yankees. And I would take that bet because the A's are hot coming off of a series win against the Astros. And I just might think that the A's could surprise the Yankees here in this upcoming series in New York. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. So Luis Morales got sent down to AAA before the game yesterday, which to me was a very surprising move. Look, I mean, Morales' first two starts were really rough to watch. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not sitting here and saying that Luis Morales was really good by any means, but I would have thought they would have given him more than just a couple of starts to try to work things out at the big league level. For context, his last outing against the Astros, he went 3 innings. He allowed 5 earned runs, and his start before that against Toronto was also not much better. So that's what ended up earning him the send down to the minor leagues for Luis Morales. And from what I've been reading, from what Martin Gallegos put out, it appears that they're kind of hoping that Morales can work on his control a little bit when he's down in the minor leagues. Again, he went 4 1/3, 5 earned runs against the Blue Jays on March 29th. And control doesn't necessarily mean the walks, although he has walked quite a few this year. Control is just basically the fact that he's missing with a lot of his out pitches up in the strike zone. A lot of people don't really talk about that when it comes to control. A lot of times when we talk about control, we're talking about walks, but equally as important is being able to locate your strikes where you want them to be, because these are big league hitters, and if you're missing down the middle of the plate with any pitch, no matter what it is, they're going to hit it, and they're going to hit it hard. So I think that's something that they wanted Morales to work on. I also was reading that they really didn't like where Morales was in in spring training. He had a 7.58 ERA in spring training. Now, spring training numbers are worth about as much as the penny is worth, because a lot of times when you're looking at spring training numbers, I mean, guys will go out in the first week of spring training. They're only throwing fastballs anyway. I mean, they're really just kind of working through things as opposed to trying to go out there and dominate per se. But overall, it sounds like the A's really weren't liking what they were seeing out of Morales early in spring training, that he was struggling with command, he was struggling with confidence. So hopefully he gets to go down to AAA and kind of figure things out a little bit. But it really opens up a big question mark in this A's starting rotation. And we just kind of ranted a little bit about the starting rotation in the first two segments. And that's who's going to start in that spot. JT Ginn supposedly is the number one candidate to start in that spot. I thought he was a setup man. But he is a candidate that can start in that spot. I'm not personally a big JT Ginn fan. I think he's been given a lot of chances. And I think that he just needs to become more of a mature pitcher to really be a reliable guy in the starting rotation. So I'm not super excited about that. There's also a possibility that Gage Jump could get called up to take that spot. I also read Mason Barnett could get called up to take that spot. Gage Jump would be very exciting, and lining it up, if they were to make that move, whoever takes that spot would start in the Mets series. I believe it would be game 2 against the Mets. So getting to see Gage Jump make his debut in New York, sign me up for that. That sounds very exciting. Mason Barnett, he doesn't really excite me. We got to see a lot of Mason Barnett last year, and we got to see a lot of Mason Barnett giving up a lot of runs last year. And the thing about Mason Barnett, at least in his first season that we got to see him in Major League Baseball with the A's, there wasn't really anything about him that was overly exciting. He kind of throws a league average fastball. His breaking pitches are okay. So if you were going to call up Mason Barnett, that would definitely be kind of a stopgap measure. But the A's have to figure this thing out because like we talked about in the last two segments, this is already a starting rotation that is pretty weak on paper, especially with how Jacob Lopez has struggled to start the season, and especially with Luis Severino's struggle to start the season. So the A's are definitely going to have to figure out that fourth spot. Again, I would have probably given Morales a little bit more time just because of how incredibly electric he was last year with a 3.14 ERA and the fact that when that guy's on, he is about as nasty as anyone in the A's organization. And I really think Luis Morales is going to be a star. Now, maybe going forward, this is the best thing for him and his maturation, just get him back down to AAA to kind of work on some things. But me personally, I would have given him a little bit more time to kind of try to sort things out up at the major league level, because it's not like the A's have any better options. Would I rather watch Luis Morales start right now, despite his bad 2 starts, or would I rather watch JT Ginn start right now? I think I'd still rather watch Luis Morales start right now. The only guy that would really excite me would be getting to see Gage Jump. And who knows, maybe we do get to see Gage Jump this week. And if that's the case, then, you're kind of just trading one superstar of the future, you hope, for another superstar of the future, you hope, in the starting rotation. So we'll see how the A's address that spot in the rotation. But again, after today, the A's definitely need a lot of help with their pitching. And I think that's abundantly clear with the way they blew it today against the Yankees. We'll be back tomorrow. Remember, if you watch every day, just sign up for the Every Dayers Club. It's a great way to stay in touch with the Locked On A's show every single day. We'll see you tomorrow.